and welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. I'm your host Jen, and I'm very excited to talk about today's episode. But before we begin, there will be spoilers as we talk about major events that unfold within the story. In addition, each episode will have a list of trigger warnings in the description. Be sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast, and show your support on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. And we're back with another episode of The Book Stop. And today, for the first time ever, we are here today with Adrian.
Hi. Yes, I am Adrian. No last name.
Oh, no last name? Like a Pink or a Madonna? Yeah, Adrian, what book did you bring for us to talk about, and why'd you bring it?
So today we're going to talk The Hunger Games. I was in a really dystopian mood. It was either that or Divergent, and Hunger Games has my heart. So yeah, that's what we're going with.
Divergent is definitely on the list. I do want to read it. Every time I see like a trailer of Divergent, I'm like, oh, I really want to watch the movies. And then I forget how bad the movies are.
Yeah, the movies are so bad, but the books are so good.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to get started here. But before we do, we're going to play a little game.
Okay.
And you are going to summarize this book in 30 seconds.
Okay.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.
Okay. Book starts in Panem, which is like a really dystopian, torn down version of the U.S. It's the U.S., but a little bit more ghetto. And we have Katniss, who is our main character, and her little sister, first time with her name in the bowl, and she unfortunately gets picked, which is real rough, and Katniss, being the best big sister ever, volunteers as tribute for her. Peeta Malark, the boy with the bread, is also picked. They go on this lovely, violent adventure together. Eventually, the game makers say, hey, 2 of you can survive. They try their darndest, and they end up making it out.
Heck yeah. All right. It's hard to do the Hunger Games because, like, everybody knows the Hunger Games. Like, at this point, you have to know the Hunger Games, especially with the craze that happened in, like, the 2010s. Absolutely. But I'm going to summarize it for that single person that is listening to this podcast and has never heard of it. In the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen regards it as a death sentence when she volunteers to take her little sister's place in the games. But Katniss has been close to death before, and survival, for her, is second nature. But if she is to win the games, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love. Hunger Games, Suzanne Collins, written in 2008. I will say, I read this book in high school, probably freshman year. I forgot how, good it is.
Yes.
And how violent it is.
It's so violent and so gory. And it took me by surprise, like, rereading it and then also listening to, like, a audio version of it. And I was just like, dang. And little middle school, high school me was just so enthralled, like, and not fazed at all.
Yeah.
By all of it. I was like, dang, are we really that desensitized already in 2008 to what crazy violence is happening?
I mean, you look at any movie and any video game nowadays that they all have violence, so it makes sense for children to be so desensitized to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just rereading it, listening to it, and it wasn't even just purely the fighting scenes. It was, like, her surviving and, like, the wounds that she has, like, how detailed it got.
Yeah, the descriptions for her wounds, and then even, like, when she would reminisce and compare her wounds to, like, the ones that she would see her mom and, like, Prim helping with.
Yeah.
And things like that. I was like, it was so gory, but at the same time, it actually really helped with, like, visualization and, like, picturing it in your mind. Props to Suzanne Collins on that one, because I feel like there are so many writers who can't help readers, with the visualization of things like that, gory and grotesque or whatever.
Yeah, it's just surprising because this is considered a young adult teen, but there are kids that read it much younger.
Oh yeah.
So what would you say in this book is your favorite quote?
Honestly, I think my favorite quote is from Peeta when they are having their like first little lunch with Haymitch and kind of talking about their skill sets and things like that. They're both going back and forth on why each other has the best skills, and she talks about how he can decorate the cakes really good, and he goes, yes, frosting, the final defense of dying. And it's like, okay, I can decorate cakes, but what is that gonna do when someone's coming at me with a knife? So that's my favorite quote from the book. And then I have a favorite quote that's not in the book. It's from the movie, and it's probably one of the most popular quotes from the movie. And it's in the same scene where they're discussing everything in their first lunch, and Katniss stabs the table because Haymitch is being Haymitch, and Effie is just so appalled by it, and she just turns so quickly. She goes, "That is mahogany." And it's, I don't know. I think Elizabeth Banks just being her embodied that and made that whole scene just 10 times better with just that little line.
Absolutely. I've read the book one time. I read it one time before, and I read it in high school. And when I was rereading it this time, I've seen the movie plenty of times, and I was waiting for that line in the book. And I was like, where is it? Where is it? And it's just crazy how, like, even though they have adaptations, there's still, like, good things that the actors and the writers and the directors can put in to enhance a book. Yeah. To make it even better. Absolutely. Not saying that the core stuff that they pull from is bad in any way. They just enhanced it. Yeah, definitely. Gave the characters more life. Because Effie is important in the series, but they gave her a stronger role in the movies. Absolutely.
And they made it a lot harder to hate Effie in the movies. Like, obviously, I don't think anyone hates her while reading the books, because you can tell that she actually is very much rooting for Katniss and Peeta, but she also has that disadvantage of being from the capital, so you automatically want to just be like, no, Effie sucks. But when you watch the movies, you're like, she's just so likable. Like, she's like that weird aunt. Yeah, exactly. Like the really weird aunt.
Absolutely. That perfectly describes her. My favorite quote. So this is Peeta and Katniss are talking the night before the games, and he's talking about how he doesn't want the capital to change him. Yeah. If he dies, he wants to die as himself. Katniss is thinking, and she says, I bite my lip, feeling inferior. While I've been thinking about the availability of trees, Peeta has been struggling on how to maintain his identity, his purity of self. And I just love that. I think a lot of it has to tie with how much I love Peeta. I think it's kind of the first spark that the readers get that he's not just a point in a love triangle. Yeah. He is a character that is there to survive just as much as Katniss. And I think this is also a point where we think, maybe Cactus. maybe Katniss might not make it out. It seems maybe, a lot of people like Peeta in the capital. Maybe he will. I really like that quote.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
So what are some things that you liked about this book?
The way that the story flows. I feel like there was no weird gap where you were like, this doesn't make any sense. Everything transitioned. And this might be just me. I've read books where like the stopping points between the one chapter and the next chapter starting are so weird, and they don't pick up in a good flow. It's like something drastic is going to happen, and then they jump to the next chapter, and it's something that doesn't flow and make sense with the storyline. Whereas each stopping point was a good stopping point. It was kind of like okay, if you have to go, this is going to be a cliffhanger to the point where you're going to run back to this book as soon as you get home. If you have to put the book down, but you're like, I got to get to the end of the chapter, you're not going to feel like you're missing anything at the end of that chapter. And it was also one of those books where it was like, even if I know I have to put this book down, and I'm like, I just got to make it to this chapter. You're like, okay, but if I read just like the first line, and then you get sucked in reading another 2 or 3 chapters, and next thing you know, you're like, crap, I've finished the book. And I love that though. That was probably the best thing. And even listening to it as an audio, it's the same thing where you're like, okay, I got to make it to this mark so I can pause it. So I don't miss anything, but then you're like, okay, but maybe if I just went to like a little bit more. And then it's like this never ending cycle. Like, this is a book that sucks you in. Absolutely. It sucks you in and you feel like you're there. That's my biggest, honestly.
Not only just for each chapter, but each book in the series. True. Like, I put this down and immediately picked up Catching Fire. I do remember when I read this in high school, I did not like Mockingjay. I think it was slow and it took me a very long time to even finish it. I would have to revisit and see if I still feel that way as an adult, now that I've read many more books and I've have a much bigger attention span. Yeah. See if it's the same way. But I always remember Catching Fire being my favorite out of the series.
Catching Fire was great.
Yeah, I agree. I think the pacing was really well done. I really enjoyed the half and half. I like that we were in the District 12 with her, where we started out, we saw her life and her story and chose why we rooted for her. And then we jumped into the games after. I think it was really paced out very well. And it's a lot faster than I remember, too.
Yeah.
I thought it took 150 pages to get into the games, and it's a lot faster, very fast-paced. I really enjoyed that, as well as how everything was delicately placed. I think that she really thought of the ins and outs of everything, as well as the inner weaving of everything, how they all connect. I really, really enjoyed the points of view from Katniss and knowing her emotions, her fears, her wants, just everything that we'll talk about in a second. So what are some things that you don't like?
I think my biggest dislike is when you were talking about point of view from Katniss is I do wish that we got to see a little bit of Peeta's point of view. And I think the biggest moment where I wish it would have been a swap to Peeta's point of view was when he was just, after Cato had sliced his leg.
Oh, yeah. When he was in the river.
When he
with
was...
all of his frosting.
Yeah, with all of his frosting. I think that would have been a good moment. Because I feel like there were so many times where we were with Katniss and she was wondering, just I wonder how Peeta is. I wonder if he's okay and things like that, and for it to be just a moment where we do get just a glimpse of his point of view. Or even if she pulled a Stephanie Meyer and was I'm gonna rewrite the Hunger Games and write it from Peeta's perspective, I think that would be
so cool.
A really good, and I feel like it would bring so much back to the trilogy in itself. It would be a whole nother craze where kind of like how it was for Twilight when we got
Midnight Sun.
Yeah. I think that was my biggest dislike, is that there was, obviously Katniss is the main character, so I understand us following her the entire way. But I do wish that we got to see little snippets of Peeta, and even when it came to him deciding I gotta partner up with the careers to save this girl. And everything behind that. I think there was just so much that he was so unthought of, and it was on no one's radar the entire time. But he's the survival genius of the games in my mind. Katniss did what needed to be done in the aspects of physicality and everything, but he played mind games.
Not only with the tributes, but with the Capitol.
Yeah, just seeing those mind games and how he came up with it and everything from his perspective is the one thing that I feel like the book missed the mark on.
Yeah, I would absolutely buy and read a point of view from Peeta. I think it would be a very interesting aspect.
Another one that I would love if at any point she was you know what, I'm going to pick Hunger Games back up and do some more with it, is seeing Haymitch's Hunger Games and how it affected him, because some dark things had to have happened for him to be the man that he is now.
When I did the Ballad of Songbirds of Snake podcast, it's in the point of view of Snow, President Snow, when he was younger. And I had said I really wish they would have done a Haymitch one. I think, obviously, President Snow was a good choice because of reasons, but I think Haymitch also would have been a really good choice to explain what happened to him. I think just a couple little stories about everybody would be kind of cool. So some things that I didn't like. I think that the twist with the two victors and then them taking away was a bit of a cop-out.
Yeah.
I feel like she literally put it in there because maybe she got stuck and was crap. Now I have two characters and I gotta get them out. Again, it makes sense. To do that because the Capitol is so manipulative, and then for them to take it back at the last second gives her that rising moment of betraying and making them look silly. But it was a tiny bit of a cop-out.
Yeah.
I also didn't love the love triangle.
Yeah.
It's not important. I don't think it was ever important in the entire series. I could have absolutely done without. Especially in the next one, it comes in more, but with the love triangle between her, Gale, and Peeta. Yeah. And how it just wasn't important. I think it was put in there for people that do like love triangles. And with this kind of story, with it being a dystopian story, it's not needed. It's not important in any way, storytelling wise. I get wanting to make those connections and then have that importance of those connections to the character, but I just didn't love it.
That is the biggest downfall of it, and I think it's just the downfall of the times in which the book was released as well. Is that romance novels for young adults was very popular with Twilight and things like that. But then you also had the dystopian age and things like that. That was also very popular. And I think it was a matter of, you couldn't really do just one at that point. You had to tie them in together. And I think she did her best to focus on the dystopian aspect of it, and she does really well. But I think she was like, I gotta bring some love into it, or it's not gonna sell as much as I want it to. Because now it's just teenagers fighting to the death.
Yeah.
And what parent is gonna? But if they're like, it's teenagers fighting to the death and they're in love, parents would be more likely to buy it for their kids. Whereas instead, it's just like, oh, here goes 12 to 18-year-olds murdering each other.
I understand Katniss and Peeta's love story. I understand the importance of it and like why they had to do it, because it literally saved their lives. It's just the Gale part that I love. Because Katniss multiple times says she doesn't have a named feeling for Gale. She never straight up says, oh, I love him. It's always been this like feeling that she's never really talked about, really thought about, because she's 16.
Yeah.
And her family's dying and like starving. Like she doesn't care about that kind of stuff. If maybe there was a little bit more draw from that side to make that. But when she like came back to the Capitol and she had Peeta next to her, and the entire time she's like, what does Gale think? And I'm like, I don't see why it's important, I guess. I don't know. But I totally get why. Absolutely what you said. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I also really think for a first book, there was a lot of information holes, I guess. This book definitely could have been a little bit thicker. It is a pretty short book. I think it could have been a little bit longer to give us a little bit more information. Obviously, it comes in the second and third book, we get more. But I would have liked a little bit more history and a little bit more character build. Besides Katniss, everyone else seemed a bit flat in comparison. It could have built out a little bit more. And I think this adaptation really, really helped flesh out those characters a lot more. But,
yeah, I can agree with the last one especially.
Yeah. So the first thing I really want to talk about is how much inspiration this book draws from our society.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have present day where they're drawing from reality shows, and the Hunger Games itself is pretty much entertainment for the Capitol, while it's life and death for the
tributes.
Tributes and districts. You know, reality TV of like Love Island.
Yeah.
Except no one dies in Love Island.
Yeah, it's like Love Island mixed with Survivor and what is it, Man versus Wild or whatever.
Naked but Afraid.
Yes.
That would be a twist.
Peeta's Bear Grylls.
I can see that.
Oh my god.
But yeah, it also pulls from the past a lot with this gladiator style fight to the death, Game of Thrones kind of vibes. So I think she was able to give this illusion that maybe this could be a future thing. This could lead to something maybe not as drastic as this is, but if there was, let's say, a war that we're leading to, this could be a possible outcome of a result of that war. Her mindset of it and like how she thought about that. So yeah, I think it's just very interesting to take such a harsh kind of topic and turn it into what she does with the trilogy.
Obviously, when it came out in 2008, reading this, we were like, okay, yes, this is something that could happen, but in a very, very dark, far out future. But then this is a book that like you can continue to read every couple of years and be like, holy crap, we're getting closer and closer to the Hunger Games potentially being a thing. It's slowly becoming less of like a fiction and more of like a possible survival guide in a sense, where you're like, all right, berries, cool, agriculture, got it. Hopefully I'm in District 1 or 3 and I don't have to worry about anything, because if I gotta survive off grain and coal, I'm screwed.
Let's be real, we'll be fishing because we got the lakes.
No, we'll be like automotive again.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, I think that would be where Michigan would head.
So the question,
yeah,
why do you think the Hunger Games took off so much in our society? What's the draw of it? What brought people in? Because if you remember back in our high school years...
Yeah, every girl was walking around with the Katniss braid.
Oh my god, yeah.
You could not walk in the hallway without seeing at least like 6 girls with like a side braid.
Yeah.
And everyone wanted to take up archery all of a sudden out of the blue.
Yeah. And everybody was doing like the whistle.
Or the finger thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would just be in the hallway and you just hear kids like doing the whistle, and then it's just the little like tribute 3 fingers to the lip thing. Yeah. Truthfully, I think Hunger Games came out kind of at the end of like Twilight kind of dying down. Hunger Games took off so crazily because it was that era of just teen cult classic books becoming films. And I think, one, just the book being so great in itself and so many people just being insane about the books. And then, boom, you get the movies. And one, I think casting had a lot to do with it, because yes, we have Jennifer Lawrence and she's freaking amazing, but of course no one really cared about her when it came to the movies. It was about Gale and Peeta. You got Thor's younger brother and the kid from Bridge to Terabithia, but now he's an adult. And
I won't take any slander against Josh Hutcherson.
Oh no, Josh Hutcherson is a great actor and everything, and we all know that. Everybody was like, yes, Peeta and Gale. That had a lot to do with it, because we were already in this time frame of Team Edward and Team Jacob, so now it's Team Gale or Team Peeta. I think the other thing was, like, we all could relate to at least one of the characters. I'm sure there was plenty of younger girls who related to Katniss in the sense of, I'm the older sister and I have all of these younger siblings to look out for, and if I was in that situation, yes, I would lay my life on the line for them. And then you have boys who were reading it who were like, I relate to Gale, like, this will be my life, and they also have younger siblings to take care of, and they're making sacrifices and things. And then you have the Peetas of the world who are like, I'm the underdog, and everyone kind of just looks over me because there are so many Gales in the world, and I have so much to offer, and now is my time to show it. And I think that was the thing, is just there were so many different characters that we could relate to, and it kind of felt like it wasn't just a book that was written. Like, it literally seemed like Suzanne Collins wrote that book for the masses of different kids. Like, there's not one single character that I don't think a single person could relate to. Even adults, I feel like, could relate to certain characters. So I think that was the thing. And then again, we were just in like a craze of all of these dystopian-y teen books and movies, like, just taking off. There was this like block where it was like teen movie after teen movie after teen movie based off a book, and it was just like a craze that just went wild.
Yeah. I think this book is definitely one that deserved it. Rereading it again, I think it had so much potential, and I think my personal opinion is that they did really well on the movies. I know a lot of people like the adaptations aren't exactly what they envisioned, but Jennifer Lawrence did an absolute amazing job with Katniss.
I don't think I would have casted anyone other than her to be Katniss. I couldn't have seen it. No.
I think Josh Hutcherson was perfect for
absolutely
Peeta, and Liam did great for Gale. And, all the cast, Primrose and Haymitch and Effie, everyone, absolute 5-star casting on that. The book itself was interesting, because, again, this is a book podcast, so we're not going to get into it too much, but I found it interesting that rereading this kind of was like a slap in the face, because I didn't expect it to be so graphic. The movie isn't, because they were trying to go for that PG-13 rating. Yeah. So a lot of the action scenes were very wobbly cameras running around, a kind of glaze over. Well, you have, for example, in the book, Cato's death scene is so drawn out, so long, and just the description for Cato's death scene in itself, them sitting on top of the cornucopia and just having to listen to him like essentially slowly die. Yeah. And then the scene where Katniss is like, okay, I just have to put him out of his misery, and she has to like hang off the side. And even just the fact of like the beast were essentially the kids from the district, and we still don't have the answer of, did they actually rob these kids of their like souls and their bodies and their actual like limbs and eyes and things like that, or is it all just like the game maker's way of fucking with the last three and being like, hey, these are your friends. Do you really want to kill these things? Like, you already killed them once. Do you want to do it again? And then for the allies, like for Katniss having to see a small like wolf beast thing that looks exactly like Rue, and she can recognize the eyes. And at this point she knows, okay, this time it's literally life or death between these two, and it's not Rue, but what if it is at the same time? And it's like, that's jarring. Yeah. I have read The Ballad of Songbirds of Snakes. I don't know if you have.
I have not yet.
I did a podcast on it recently. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to that. It's really good.
Go listen to it.
Reading that, I'm not gonna give any spoilers or anything, but reading that, I 100% believe that they are part of those beasts. Just from the backstory and the insight you get from that book, I would 100% believe that those are actually parts of the tributes as the monsters.
That's disturbing.
Yeah, it is disturbing.
She's a disturbing genius, that's Suzanne Collins.
Yeah, is she okay?
Right.
Has anybody asked her?
Has anyone checked on her?
So I just want to talk about Katniss for a second. Obviously, we've talked about Jennifer Lawrence playing Katniss, but I want to talk about specifically Katniss.
Okay.
I think she is the perfect balance of a character. And I think she is not only very witty and cunning and sticks to her guns about things, but she also has fear and innocence that is being stripped away from her going to the Capitol. She was the best option out of everyone to follow along in the story. I always say that points of views are great for a story.
Yeah.
I think this is one book that did so much better without the point of view. I think having that one insight from that one person, even though I would love to know what's going on in Peeta's head, especially when he's in the games, I would love to see all of that. But I think having just her point of view, it helps explain everything, especially later on in the series when she becomes the eye of, or the image of the rebels. So I love seeing the strip of her being a child grown, how she is a hero for all of these people, and she doesn't want to be. She never wanted to be anybody but a hero to her sister.
Right. I think one thing with Katniss that sometimes it's very hard to, and with all of the tributes, honestly, but mostly with her, is with her experiencing her father die, seeing how it destroyed her mom, and then her having to kind of like step up and be that parental figure for Prim and stuff like that. We sometimes, or at least myself, I sometimes would forget that like she was a teenager. She's
like
a
16.
child. Yeah, she's 16. Like that's still a kid. She's in her like main development stage for real, and going through all of these crazy things with just being a young adult. And now it's like I'm a young adult taking care of my mom and sister, and now I have to go and fight this battle to the death and still think of my family at the end of the day. Like each time that there was something crazy happening in the games, every move she made was, okay, I know that I'm on camera, I know I'm being watched, I know that they're at some point going to show me, and I cannot show any weakness because Prim is watching.
Yeah.
I feel like that was like her driving force for the entire games was, I have to get home to my sister. If I die, I hope it's a quick death so that my sister doesn't have to watch me suffer.
Yeah.
It was never, I hope it's a quick death so I don't have to suffer. It was always, I don't want Prim to see me this way. I don't want my mom or Gail. It was always about the people closest to her.
Yeah.
And it was always, if Peeta did win, even when she didn't want him to win, it was if he did win, she didn't want him to see her suffer. And it just goes to show like the strength and the care that Katniss has as a character. Like she is selfish in so many ways, but at the end of the day, everything that she does is for the people she cares about. I feel like that's hard to write, to have all of these adult qualities in a child, but also still make them so childlike. Again, Suzanne Collins is a freaking genius.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, is like it's hard to find a balance where you don't accidentally age up your character. A lot of authors do that, where they have a child who is in their teens, but you want them to act like they're in their 30s, and it doesn't translate well.
Yeah.
But this
it just makes them annoying.
Yeah.
It just makes them really annoying.
But this does a great job. I love relearning about Katniss from a different perspective other than the movie, and finding that internal monologue. I have another question for you.
Okay.
With your own personal history with this book, were you Team Peeta or Team Gale? Since we were talking about it, I gotta throw it in there.
Oh, I hate to be like that person who was like with Twilight and I was like, oh, I'm Switzerland, or oh, I'm Team Alice, but I truthfully I did not like either one of them.
Yeah.
For Katniss, simply because with Peeta, I know that his love was like for her actually was genuine, and it wasn't just this ploy for them both to survive. You could sense it, but then I think she made it very easy to dislike him for a brief moment at the end, where he kind of realizes like, oh, maybe it was real for me, but it might not have been as real for her. And for him to just kind of turn into the stereotypical like doucher in a way about it all of a sudden. It's like, I thought you actually had feelings for me, but you were just playing this game to survive, and I thought you actually loved me. And it's like, dude, y'all ain't showered in days, mud everywhere, and both of you have been fighting to the death, and you really think now is the time for her to realize that she's in love with you?
Right, she thought she had to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, why would she develop feelings for you?
Exactly. She thought that it was going to be one of you was going to go home alive, and one of you was going to go in this unmarked casket. She had so much more to fight for, so of course she was going to keep doing what needed to be done. Yeah. There are points where we get a sense that Katniss may be developing feelings for him, but she's still very much like, I gotta push those down because I have to survive. And whenever I got to those points, I was like, Peter, you're just so
dramatic.
Like he gives the ick. He gives the ick so many times. And then kind of the same thing with Gale, where to me, Gale was a great character in the friendship sense and the protective older brother sense. But she kind of wrote him in the sense of there becoming a moment where it seems like he feels like he owns Katniss. Like, there's this, like, possession with it because it was just the two of them for so long. And now Pete is in the mix and... jealous. Yeah, he's very jealous. And it's like, you guys don't have an established relationship. Yeah. And you're 18. Yeah. Which is also something that I was like, oh, I forgot that he's technically 2 years older. Yeah. Which was a thing for me, too. But, yeah, so I was always just like, I'm Katniss by herself all the way.
Yep, same. See, I was Team PETA for a while because it's Josh Hutcherson. And if anybody knows, I am obsessed with him. And he's, like, my favorite actor, and I just love him. So I was Team Josh Hutcherson than I was Team PETA. But yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't think the love story was important at all. And it wasn't what kind of drove me to the story. The plot itself, the underlying meaning of everything brought me. But did I go to the theater wearing a Josh Hutcherson shirt? And did I go to look at his face in the big screen crying? Yeah. Yes, I did. Absolutely. But speaking for just PETA and Gale in the story, I think neither one of them were great. I'm glad that she ended up with PETA at the end because I hate Gale, especially in the last book. I can't stand him, and I think he makes some dumb choices. But yeah, I think she thrives better on her own. Yeah. So I just want to take a second here to shout out some Patreon subscribers. So big shout out to Nick W, Bree P, and Lulu. I appreciate you guys listening and supporting the podcast. It means a lot to me. I enjoy doing this, and I love that people are listening. At least 3 people are listening. So that's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
So if you want to appear in a podcast shout out, head over to Patreon and subscribe today. So who would you say in this one is your favorite character?
Haymitch.
All right.
I absolutely love Haymitch, and a lot of people don't. They're like, oh, he's just this drunk and he doesn't care and he's willing to let these kids die and things like that. I don't get that at all. I see someone who is broken when it comes to Haymitch, because he's one of the only victors, or no, he is the only, well, now one of the only victors, but he is the OG victor of District 12, and to see someone that you came in with die at such a young age and you come out alive, and see also so many other kids from other districts die, but then to know that now your job is to try and train up kids and set them up for this same fate, and know that there is a good chance that none of those kids are going to make it home alive. That does something to you. So I think Haymitch is very much a good representation of just like what depression can do to a person and like what trauma can do to a person. And I think Haymitch gives us I'll say softer because it's not right in our face, but a softer look at what war trauma can do to people, and it gives us a better glimpse at what like PTSD can look like for certain vets and things like that, because when we see it, obviously it's very traumatic and things like that, but reading it and kind of visualizing it and then having to be like, yeah, he's watched several kids that he got to spend so much time with and rooting for and hoping, and maybe even seeing them get to a point where he was like, oh snap, they could actually win this thing, just for them to be taken out. Yeah. And now you have to go and live in the ivory towers of the victors section or whatever, but those kids' parents are grieving, and now it's like, okay, I have all of these things, but what good is it if these kids are still suffering? And then also a very snarky character, and I love the dynamic that him and Katniss have is probably my favorite. As much as she shits on Haymitch. I feel like she gets a little glimpse of what she's been missing from losing her dad when it comes to her relationship with Haymitch. I don't think it's something that Katniss would ever admit, but I think she is very happy that Haymitch is like in her life, and they have that weird father-daughter, broody uncle, very annoying, overstepping niece dynamic.
Absolutely. I think first meeting Haymitch, Katniss looked down upon him because he was just a drunk. And a lot of that was to close the casket on his past and hide away his depression and as PTSD. Katniss envisioned somebody that was going to help her survive, and he couldn't really do that at first because it was said, see, all these kids died. He doesn't know who Katniss is. He just assumed she's another duck in the line. He's learned to close himself off. That hurts Katniss because she's like, you are my first line of offense and you should be willing to put yourself out there and help us. Then Haymitch spends time with them and sees that they're actually going to win, and that's when he kind of kicks into overdrive and is like, I'm going to do whatever I can. And I think if one of them were to die, I think that would have been the end of Haymitch. Yeah. Him getting connected to these two kids, doing everything he could, which again, I think a POV of Haymitch would be really cool to see him in the Capitol trying to get sponsors. Yeah, if one of them were to die, I think that would have been the end. I don't think he would have survived.
Yeah, I think seeing Haymitch's reactions, like if we could get a POV from certain characters, seeing Haymitch's reactions to the explosion where she goes deaf and seeing everything that Peeta's doing and seeing the beatings that he takes from Cato, because I can tell that it would be a matter of him either having a breakdown of anger at not being able to help these kids and be there in the games to protect them, or it would be him giving in to his depression and his PTSD and just going on a binge with drinking, and then getting to a point where they're, again, just him going absolutely bonkers and crazy and on a rage, or him going off the deep end and Effie kind of having to like get him back to, hey, they're still here and they need you to still be here. As we progress in the series, we can see the connection that him and Effie have also grow. There's some things that we miss in the background between the two of them because obviously they both worked very closely together to make sure those two kids survive, to help build their relationship to make it what it is in the next 2 books.
Yeah, so this is when point of views would be awesome to get into those deeper insights, but it's also kind of fun to like leave it up to interpretation, make your own solutions out of it. Yeah, because I'm sure there's some people that read and don't even think twice about Haymitch and Effie and you know, Prim and Cinna and like all these people. Like, people don't pay attention to them because they're the back line. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. I said my favorite character was Peeta. Okay, so listen, I know I said that I didn't love Peeta, but I think he was a good polar opposite of Katniss. Yeah. I think he was a good person to play across from her. He was very obviously a lover, not a fighter. Yeah. And having someone like that in the games was very interesting. And I love that he didn't resort to violence every time and that he did go and hide. You know, he's just a very kind and gentle person, and he's the exact opposite of what you see in the game to survive and beat the games. Peeta kind of gets a harder rep because we only see Peeta through Katniss's eyes. So we have all of her interpretations of him. And how, especially when he makes her look weak by saying that he has a crush on her. Yeah. Having that line of vision with him, it, I think, hurts him a little bit more. But I think he's a great character. I love how manipulative he is of the Capitol, and he's got them playing in their hands. Yeah. Like when he's on the talk show with Caesar. Literally, I love that scene so much. And he's like, do I smell like roses?
Yeah, they're sniffing each other.
Yeah, I love that scene so much. He's a mastermind. He is the mind, and while she's the strength. So I think they are good counterparts for the games. If it was like, let's say, for example, Gale in the games instead of Peeta, no. They would have died within the first hour because they just wanted each other.
Yeah, and I feel like Gale would have been the one to say, we're not going to listen to Haymitch. We're going to come up with our own ideas. And they would have ran straight into the cornucopia and died within the first 2 seconds of the games.
Yes, absolutely. So there's one person I want to talk about that I think was very interesting that we got a ton more in the book than we did the movie, and that is Katniss's dad. Yeah. Unnamed. They never directly name him, I don't think.
Nope, it's just Katniss's dad.
I loved reading more about the fallout of the death of her father and the impact that it not only had on her, but on her entire family. she mentions her dad throughout the entire book and how she's drawing inspiration from his strength, his guidance. I think that was one mention where I said there was kind of holes in the book. I would have loved a little bit more of the family dynamic. Maybe even flashbacks would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Of where we actually see the dad. That would draw a little bit more solid ground, I guess, to see like the impact that he has on her. I always say that everything happens for a reason. I am a strict believer of that. As bad as it sounds, her dad dying was kind of a good thing. Because her dad dying made her stronger. And made her stronger so she could learn to hunt. And to learn to hunt, she got into the games. It's made her survive. Yeah, it was an awful thing, obviously. Yeah. But in the character world, in the book, it helped her kind of become a stronger person in a very awful way. If the things that happened in her life didn't happen, she would not have made it out of the Hunger Games. So
very true. I agree in the sense of like I wish that we had gotten moments when it was a moment when she was talking about like, oh, when with my dad things were like this, or things that reminded her of times with her dad. If we had got like a little flashback moment, or if that memory had gone a little deeper, or even I think what would have been amazing is I believe it was the scene where she goes to the cornucopia to grab the bags for the feast type thing, and Clove nicks her right in the forehead and she starts bleeding out essentially. And when she gets to the cave, she keeps saying that her mom is there like brushing her hair and like giving her a kiss on the forehead and like gently waking her up, that because it seems like she has this comfort in her dad if that was her dad instead. I feel like it would have been tugged at the heartstrings a little bit more for in this moment where or even the moment with the tracker jackers and things start to get a little loopy and things like that, and when she comes out of it, if in that haze it's her dad that's pulling her out of the haze or things like, because it seems like her dad is that driving force within her as well, and that's her like comfort. And when things get down, it's either her dad or Prim who pull her out of it. That was something that could have been played on a bit more, especially in those moments where it was like is she gonna make it, is she not gonna make it,
life flashing before her eyes.
Because the story kind of leads it to be that like she sees her dad as like this forever guardian angel type thing, and we're better for him to make appearances to her than in the games. We only get one real scene, the movies, of the dad, and so when I was rereading this book, I was like, dang, they talk about the dad a ton. Like, a lot more than I thought it was going to be. And I just found it interesting that they decided to go that way, where they kind of take the dad out of the situation. The dad is so important to Katniss. I found it very interesting that they kind of take that crutch from her. And it took a little bit of character out of her, I think. Yeah, I think it took a little bit of, like, depth out of her and made her a little less three-dimensional, I guess. So, in this book, I think my favorite relationship would be Katniss and Cinna. Okay. I think Cinna's a great character. He was my second choice for favorite character. I honestly think that Cinna was the spark of the rebellion. Yes. I think his dresses and the things that he made for her, it ignited the rebellion, turned her into the Mockingjay. And I know that Cinna cared about her. It was very obvious that he did. Even though he cared about her, he cared about the rebellion a little bit more. He cared about getting out of this war more than her, which sounds bad, but he loved her just as much. And Cinna was the first person in the capital that didn't like reward her for being in the situation. And he was human, I guess is one way to say it, is like he was a person that was staring at her with sorrow, and she accepted that. Not somebody that was staring at her like, oh my god, you're gonna win, you're gonna do a great job. Like he was there on her side in the best way. I just love their relationship. I'm just thinking about the second movie and I don't want to. Yeah. I was about to say, that's the thing. I was like, dang, I keep thinking about the second book and I'm like, poor Cinna. They did him dirty. They did Cinna dirty. But it makes sense, but it's so bad. And it also really thrives on your comment of him being the true driving force behind the rebellion. It was like the capital even knew the power that Cinna held. And they're like, this girl already holds so much power. Her, with this man at her side, in any way, they knew that the capital would crumble.
Yeah, absolutely. It does.
It was like good.
I really enjoyed Cinna's presence on her life. I just wish there was a little more, because we don't get a ton of time with Cinna. We get maybe that week when she's also training, so we only get a few scenes with Cinna. But I think they're very impactful. They left a mark on her that helped drive her to want to lead the rebellion because of Cinna. Yeah, I just really like them. Who is your favorite relationship?
I think I kind of touched on it when we talked about favorite character, but I would say her relationship with Haymitch. Obviously, in the first one, it's very touch and go and it's very rocky. But as the book continues on, there's that moment where she said, essentially, that her and Haymitch actually are very much alike. That was why he communicated with her through the gifts instead of PETA. Because PETA would see a pot of broth and just say, oh, it's a pot of broth and no big deal. PETA would see the lack of water being sent to him as Haymitch trying to kill him or not caring, whereas she had that thought and then was like, no, he knows I'm smart, that must mean that I'm very close to water. Her having that understanding of, I am very similar to this man, that helped her have a little bit more understanding of Haymitch himself. So that's probably my biggest one. But I think in turn, I also will just say that Katniss's relationship with the districts themselves, but more in particularly District 11, obviously that relationship sparked because of what she did for Rue and Thresh, with him letting her go. Yeah. And saying, like, now we're even. You tried your hardest to protect that little girl. You killed who took her out. I'm going to let you pass for now, but if we cross paths again, it's still your life or mine. For District 11 to kind of break every rule and say, hey, this was meant to go to her, and we know we have another tribute, but we want to send it to this tribute instead for protecting her as a thank you. Yeah. And her, instead of just saying like, oh, sweet, I got this bread, for her to actively search out a camera or just look up in the sky and say, I know there's a camera on me right now, and I want to make it very clear that I know where this gift came from. I think that also was like a very big moment for the rebellion in itself. It's just her having that relationship. And there was so much talk from Katniss when her and Rue were discussing the differences between their districts, where she's like, they're probably muting out this entire conversation because they don't want the districts to know anything about each other. Through her watching all of the other tributes, she learned so much about the other districts. She had an appreciation for them, even for the careers and the things that they were able to have that she was not able to have as a child and things like that. She still had an appreciation for everything within those districts. Yeah. And I think that also was a big factor in why she was the one who was chosen to be the like poster child for the rebellion, was her appreciation for all of the differences between the districts. Yeah.
It also goes with that not only did she protect Rue, but she mourned for Rue. She had a memorial service, I guess. She had the flowers around her. I think that kind of sparked the rebellion as well, because I think a lot of people in the Hunger Games, they don't really mourn for other people, just the people in their own districts. Seeing Katniss be so wrecked by Rue's death and doing all of this stuff to be respectful of her after she had passed, and it being a different district really sparked that in people. And obviously Rue was beloved by everybody in the district. She was a very young girl and everyone loved her. So Rue, again, also sparked some of the rebellion as well. But I think having that connection with Rue and Katniss was extremely important. It was something that made, I think, the other district think, you know, we're not all so different after all. We're all kind of all in the same situation at the end of the day. Yeah. So, well, I hate to leave it off on such a sad note, but do you want to play a game? Sure. I have the tributes in front of me, and you're just going to tell me what district is their home. Okay. All right, so we're going to start with Thresh.
11.
Yeah. A lot of these are probably going to be really easy. Cato.
Ooh, Cato is District 1. No, 2.
2. Yeah, Foxface.
She is District 4?
Not 4.
5.
5.
I'm like always one off.
District 5. Rue.
11.
PETA.
12.
Yep. Glimmer.
I think Glimmer's District 1.
Yep. District 1. Clove.
Clove is Austro District 2 because she came in with Cato, right?
Yep. Katniss Everdeen.
12.
That was the hardest one.
So hard.
And Marvel.
Oh, crap. I want to say 6.
Mm-mm.
But I feel like that's not right.
No, not 6.
Watch me 7.
No, it's not 7.
Okay. Is it the other way? 5?
District 1.
What? Oh.
Came in with Glimmer. Which, when I was making this game, it was very interesting that we didn't get all the tributes named. Again, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, just talk about for a second. They name every tribute and every mentor.
Wow.
Which was one thing that I hated about the book, is because there were so many people. Mm-hmm. This one, there's not enough people.
Yeah.
With 24 contestants and tributes, there should be at least one from each district named. But 3, 4 doesn't have any. 7, 8, 9, none were named. I think in 10 there was none named. Like, we see them in the movies, we see them running around, but they never get a specific name.
It was always just the boy from District 13.
Yes, yeah. But it makes sense, because Katniss doesn't want to get attached to any of them, and, like, they're not important. They're gonna die. It was never really important for her, but I think as a reader, it would have been important for us
to have know. At least a name with a district.
Yeah. All right. Yay. I don't know if you won or not, but there's no prize, so it doesn't matter. All right, so a couple more things before we go. What are some missed opportunities? So what if you were writing this book yourself, your own opinions? What are some things that you would have changed, done differently?
Kind of like we touched on earlier, having a moment where there was like a flashback of her and her dad.
Yes.
Just so we really got to see that relationship or visualize that relationship a little bit more. I feel like there was a little bit of it that lacked. Obviously, we know how big of a part her dad plays in her survival. Not just in the games, but in the district itself. And it would have been nice to be able to kind of see why it was such a big deal.
Yeah.
Because we just hear so much of her talking about how great of her dad was, but we didn't get any interaction between them. So just like a little flashback. Or they could have even played on it when Pete asked her like the happiest like memory she had. I fully was expecting us to get something about her father and not Prim's goat.
Yeah.
And I feel like, not to crap on Suzanne Collins, because again, she did such an amazing job with this book, but I feel like it was just something that she just could not get right. She probably tried very hard to get a moment with Dad in the book, and it just did not fit.
Makes sense. Yeah, the goat story just came out of nowhere, and I'm like, what is happening?
I was like, your happiest memory is
a goat. I mean, I guess if you wanted to think about it, like, that goat kind of saved their life a little bit. When your life gets saved by a goat. You're right. Wish there was more backstory with the mom after her father's death. I wish we would have saw why Katniss hated her mom so much. Okay, hated was strong. Distrust her mom so much. Because we get this idea, like, you know, she phased out and kind of fell into this pit of depression and, like, yeah, that makes sense that her husband died and, you know, she has 2 children that she can't feed. She's in the poorest district and there's a Hunger Games coming up. Obviously, she's gonna do that. I understand Katniss being a strong person because of this reason. I just really would have loved more where we saw it happen a bit more. Because we get that small thing where she brings something home and her mom finally gets out of bed and makes them food and they ate like a bunch of soup. We don't really get a ton of background on it and I really wished we did.
Because the way that Katniss tells it, it's not just the bout of depression that makes her distrust her mom. Like you said, like, we got to see a little bit more because the way that she is with her mom, sometimes it makes Katniss seem like this, like, spoiled brat, kind of. And it's like, oh, my mom doesn't, and it's like, you're 16 and you can care for yourself. And yes, she's not there for your sister, but you are very upset about losing your father, but she also lost the love of her life, essentially. That does something to a person. It seems like Katniss just could not give her mom the benefit of the doubt of, yes, I still love you and I still care about you, but I had to make sure that you guys were good and now I am mourning myself. That would have helped as well. Did her mom essentially fizzle out as soon as Dad passed, or did she fizzle out slowly by pouring everything that she had left into her kids to make sure that they were able to cope with his death?
Yeah.
And then putting herself on the back burner until she no longer could, and everything just took a hold of her at one time.
Yeah, I would have loved a little bit more structure. Because I understand why she resents her mom for it.
Yeah,
because it forced her to grow up. But in a world, in this society, I think that's a good thing. I think it made her stronger and made her survive. I can see either side, but I wish we just got a little bit more. Yeah. Fleshed out a little bit better. But yeah, so we're about to head out. But before we go, we do one last thing.
Sweet.
So we are going to do our rating scale,
Okay.
but do a little bit different here on the book stuff. We make up our own thing. So I would give The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins a 3-finger salute out of 5. I really enjoyed this book. I think this is a great first book. I wish there was a little bit more things fleshed out character-wise, but I think the plot itself was very strong, and I can completely understand why it took off and why everybody loves it so much.
I give The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins 4 Tracker Jackers out of 5. This book was probably one of the first books that I read like cover to cover multiple times in a summer. I think I've read the trilogy in itself so many times that I almost had it memorized at one point, and that I had to like re-buy copies of it because the binding was breaking and torn and tattered and everything. So my like middle school comfort book, and rereading it as an adult, I was like, yeah, this is still a great book. You know, you read some, like I've reread Twilight, and I'm like, this
oh my god.
It falls short a little bit.
Yeah.
But this, it's so good. It's just so good.
It is. It really is. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on over and talking about this book with me.
Of course. Thank you for having me, and thanks for letting little 13-year-old Adrian live his dream of just nerding out about the Hunger Games for an hour.
Of course. This is why I love doing this. I love talking to people's passions. We don't have anything scheduled right now, but if you guys want to see Adrian on it again, interact with this episode, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for turning the pages with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support by leaving a review, sharing the episode, and following the podcast on Instagram at @thebookstoppodcast. Join us on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hope you are too.